Hi everyone, it's Elizabeth from Elpis Astrology at elpisastrology.com. Thanks for joining me today. So today I am going to do my video on a Venus retrograde in Leo. And this is actually a really interesting Venus retrograde, and I think it's probably going to be significant for at least some of us. Venus in Leo stays in Leo for quite some time. So we're looking at it really starting at the beginning of June 2023, and then coming out of Leo around not quite mid-October. It goes into the first week of October 2023. So it's quite a long time where Venus stays in Leo, whether it's direct or retrograde. The actual retrograde starts on the 23rd of July 2023 at 28 degrees of Leo. And it will go direct at 12 degrees of Leo on the 2nd of September 2023. What's interesting is that this Venus, when it goes retrograde at 28 degrees of Leo, will do so very close to the star Regulus. Now, for most of us, we were born with Regulus being at 28 degrees Leo. Most astrologers nowadays subscribe to the idea that Regulus has actually moved into around 1 degree of Virgo, but it's still very close, whichever way you want to cut it. So I thought that was quite interesting too. And Regulus is a royal star, just like Leo is a royal sign. Now, the last time we had a Venus retrograde in Leo was about 8 years ago. But the thing is, it went retrograde at 0 degrees 46 minutes of Virgo, and then went direct at 14 degrees of Leo. But this time it stays in Leo completely. So certainly for those folks that have something significant in Leo, you can expect some real activation here, because it'll go direct, retrograde, and then direct again over those degrees, anywhere between 12 degrees and 28 degrees of Leo, right? So it covers a wide kind of degree points, almost all of them if you think about it, for Leo. So when we look at the meaning of Venus in Leo, words like desire for self-expression come up, drama. It's a fire sign, and I would say it's a very fiery fire sign. It likes to express itself gracefully and artistically. These people that have their Venus in Leo tend to be tastemakers and trendsetters of fashion. So these may come more to, and beauty, by the way, too. So these may come more to the forefront, too, during that whole time period between June and October 2023. These folks are in love with love. So these are the kinds of things we're going to be feeling for, many months, where we really want to be appreciated. We are going to be very happy. And like I said, there's going to be some drama as well surrounding at least some of us. But the main thing here is with Leo is Leo needs to, well, Venus in Leo needs to express its love authentically, and almost like without anything holding it back. Leo isn't afraid to express, show, or tell the world about how much they love somebody, right? So with all this love and drama and desires, that's the type of thing that we're going to be radiating, right? So our soul is going to be at a fairly high level here with regards to love. Now, classically, and you'll hear many astrologers talking about this, a Venus retrograde means that you could have a past love come back into your life. Or, especially in Leo, perhaps a past childhood friend of significance could come back in too. And for sure, for some folks, that may actually happen, especially, say, if you've got your own, I would say if you've got your own Venus in Leo, but because the sun actually rules Leo, I would say those that have their sun as well. But certainly anything can be activated here if it's in Leo, right? And we can leave comments back and forth. Folks that remember what happened about 8 years ago, maybe we can leave some comments to say what happened to you, so we can say maybe that's going to happen again in some form this year in 2023. So the other thing I looked at was the Sabian symbol for this. So we're looking at the Sabian symbol of 29 degrees of Leo. You always round up. And it's a mermaid emerges from the ocean waves for rebirth in human form. So this certainly does speak to intense feelings. With the water being portrayed by the mermaid, we're also talking about intuition here, maybe even some psychic abilities. And it's like the unconscious on the verge of taking form as conscious thought. So I guess this, to me, when I read this, I thought, well, I guess as we should always be careful what thoughts we allow to occupy our mind, especially those that tend to, go over and over in our minds. This says to me, be careful what you wish for. That's what I thought this really said. Because what you wish for could become something real for you. So here I'm making this video in January 2023, so this gives all of us a chance to think about, well, what is it that I love, right? And how can I radiate something from myself to attract that which I want? And certainly something like a vision board could be handy, right? Especially as you put a vision board together that really represents how you want to feel. So you don't necessarily have to put in, unless it really is significant, the actual color of this person's hair and their eyes, and the fact that they must be handsome or pretty, but more with the feeling of how I want to feel. Like, say, I want to feel happy. So bright sunshine, having fun with friends on the beach would be a good picture to pick, right? All right, the other thing that is also happening when Venus goes retrograde is that we're going to have a yod formed. So this adds another layer of significance to the Venus retrograde. And what we have is we have Pluto as well as Neptune, which will still be retrograde. Pluto will be at 29 degrees of Capricorn, and Neptune's going to be at 27 degrees of Pisces. And both of these planets, so they form the base, are going to be pointing, the yod is going to be pointing to that Venus retrograde at 28 degrees of Leo. So this really does say that there's probably going to, just on a surface type thing, to kind of generalize the effect of it, I would say that this says to me there's going to be a lot of transformational power here with Pluto. And Neptune could bring in soulmate type energy when we look at that together with Venus. Could really materialize for some folks over this time period from June all the way through the first part of October 2023. So I guess this just harks back to my earlier comment where I talked about the Sabian symbol. It's important that you have it very clear in your mind what you value, what you want to attract, and in kind, what you're going to do or what you maybe need to do to attract that right person that you want in your life for love. Now, certainly the other thing that could be coming up, because Leo does rule royalty as well as our Hollywood royalty, but in particular our royalty itself, we could have something happen in the royal family. There are a number of royal families in the world. The most prominent or talked about one really is the British royal family. But there's also other ones too. We've got Monaco as well, has a royal family as well. And in fact, Princess Charlene may have some kind of things happen around her with regards to her home. Perhaps she'll make her home in a different way, or maybe have more than one home. Maybe she'll manage to get back to South Africa more often. But there's something up for her because we have the Saturn is at 28 of Leo in her 4th house. And she has her sun as well as her midheaven in Aquarius, which of course will be opposite to this Venus retrograde. And her moon is in Leo too. So certainly it does emphasize the royal part of her connection here. So the other thing that, generally speaking, when we talk about something like Leo being focused here as a sign, we're looking at royalty, like I said. We're also looking at fame. So there could be some folks that will, rise to some level of fame somehow here. Recognition, that type of thing. Leo the lion is the actual symbol of Leo. And of course, this talks to courage. So there may be other folks that have their courage come up in a big way, where maybe they have to have the courage to approach the person they love. That's the other thing that could be going on as well. But Venus does talk about beauty. And it also talks about money. And when we've got the Venus connected with the royal sign of Leo, we could also be talking about clothing takes on some kind of different significance at this time too. So I'll look at some other people here that are well known in the world. We've got King Charles, and King Charles' ascendant is at 5 degrees of Leo. He's got his Pluto at 16 degrees of Leo. And nicely, he's got his Jupiter at 29 Sagittarius, which of course trines Leo. So he may have some interesting things to say to the world, but he may also expand some things, especially in terms of his, with the Sagittarius Jupiter, looking at the long picture here, right? For the royal family. So he may be actively involved in that over that time period that I spoke about. We also have Madonna. Interestingly, she's got her sun at 23 degrees and her Venus at 0. And then her Uranus is actually at 12 degrees of Leo. So maybe she's going to reinvent herself again and entertain us as per usual. But what's interesting for her is all her Leo planets are actually in the 12th house. So it may have her doing some things of significance behind the scenes that not everyone sees right away. Okay, Meghan Markle, she has her sun as well as her Mercury in Leo and her north nodes. Her sun is at 12 degrees of Leo. And so this is the degree that we have the Venus retrograde going direct at. So maybe she will change up her image somehow. That's what I'm getting associated with that. But the other thing in terms of like generations of people, we have, there'll be folks listening to this who were born in certain years in the 50s, in particular October 1955 to January 1956, and then again August 1956 and September 1956. Now those folks had Pluto at 28 degrees of Leo. So this Venus retrograde will activate the Pluto in their chart. And for some folks, this may actually involve some kind of transformation, maybe of themselves, maybe transformation of their love at a certain level. It could also, with Pluto too, it can refer to big money. So it could also be a time that people come into some money with this setup, right? With their natal Pluto being at 28 of Leo. But certainly Pluto, as an effect, likes to do gradual changes and transformation. So we'll have to see. Keep in touch with me, those folks that do have birthdays that I've just mentioned. That I think would be interesting to see. Now there's another generation that actually has their natal Uranus at 28 of Leo. Now, Uranus acts suddenly and unexpectedly. So there may be some folks born September, October 1961, February 1962, and July of 1962, with Uranus at 28 degrees of Leo, that have some sudden changes in their lives. And of course, you have to look at our individual charts to see both where Pluto is for those folks that have it at 28 Leo, and for those folks that have Uranus at 28 Leo, you need to look at the house for sudden potential changes. I mean, Uranus can also bring in enlightenment, so there may be some aha moments or epiphanies for some folks. I mean, there'd be, especially potent effect if you not only have those planets natally, but if you also have something like, say, your sun, your moon, your ascendant, your midheaven also at 28 degrees. That will add an extra emphasis for sure. All right, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go through some of the dates that stood out for me. There's going to be lots of other ones, and as we maybe get closer to June and July, I'll maybe bring up more dates and transits that are happening with regards to Venus being in Leo. But I'm just going to bring up some ones that stood out for me. So all of June, not only will we have Venus in Leo, but we're going to have Mars there too. So I would say for folks, and of course, June is going to have Venus going direct. It will not be retrograde in June. So I think that's going to be interesting too. If I were going to pick a month for new, dramatic, authentic, creative, either love or creative projects to start, I would pick June as a very good time to initiate something, because although Mars will not be conjuncting Venus directly, Mars will be in Leo, causing activation, right? So I saw June as a very favorable time, potentially for creative projects to start of any sort, as well as to start a new romance. Mars also gives you courage and gives energy too, so it gives a boost, right, to make things potentially happen. It can also activate in Leo, and combined with that Venus, it could also bring money in for some folks that need it, or even making more money at that time. I'll go through each of the ascendants and sun signs towards the end of this video, and so we'll discuss then specifically for each of you and your ascendants, right, and sun signs. So on the 20th of June, we have Venus in Leo going into shadow at 12 degrees of Leo. At the same time, we're going to have Jupiter sextiling a retrograde Saturn at 7 degrees exactly. This is going to be, as I said, the shadow time period. So certainly if you are thinking of doing anything like major surgery of some sort, especially plastic surgery, and this is classic astrology or traditional astrology that I'm quoting, I certainly would avoid any kind of big changes that you're going to make to yourself, especially any physical changes or beauty changes during the actual retrograde period, for sure. But when we've got that Jupiter sextiling Saturn, I think that's just opportunities here to potentially lay down some new structures, that type of thing. And maybe these structures will be related more to, say, money, that you decide to do something with your money with regards to an opportunity, perhaps to save, right? To gather as opposed to spend. All right, so that's when the shadow period starts, is the 20th of June. On the 12th of July, we will have Mercury that's going to be in Leo. And the 28th of July, that Mercury will conjunct a Venus retrograde at 28 degrees. So there's some messages being brought in here for some folks that are important. We could also hear something. This is the time when we may hear from people like the royal family, any royal family, with regards to some important message that has to be put out. Now, we will have Venus going retrograde at that time when that message comes in. So there may have to be some correction to whatever messages are brought out. Now, the message more than likely will have something to do with a female. But I would say that you're going to have this whole Venus go direct and go back over the 28 degree of Leo. So that's going to really be more like October 2023, where we're going to truly understand that message that was being brought in on the 12th of July. On the 13th of August, just before the 13th of August, I'll just emphasize, I've already mentioned it, that it's the 23rd of July, but I will again. The 23rd of July, we will have Venus going retrograde at 28 degrees of Leo. Okay, so following that, on the 13th of August, the ruler of Leo, which is the sun, so this is going to be an important day all round, is going to be conjunct that Venus retrograde at 20 degrees of Leo. So certainly if you've got something in your chart at 20 degrees of Leo, I would say it's going to be an important day for you on the 13th of August. It could be, for some folks, this literally may be somebody coming back into your life on this day, if you've got something around the 20 degree mark. On the 16th of August, this is another important day. We're going to have a new moon in Leo at 23 degrees of Leo. So these could also be time points where I'm thinking that just because classic astrology says that Venus retrograde means a love coming back into our lives, I think another thing that can happen, especially because Venus is in Leo, and Leo represents, amongst many other things, true love. I think that this time period, whether it's Venus is retrograde or whether it's direct, could also be a time for some folks to develop a relationship. And maybe it'll be a new start in June, and then July, and maybe August. For some folks, there's some delay, or there's some rethinking, or there is literally an analysis going on in some folks' minds with regards to a new relationship, where they're asking themselves, is this what I want? Is this true love? And that's the activity that happens for some folks with this Venus retrograde or Venus direct. And that for some folks, they may make some decisions once Venus goes direct at the beginning of September 2023. On the 20th of August, we have the sun trining the north nodes. And of course, at that time, the north nodes are going to be in Aries at 26 degrees of Leo, 26 degrees of Aries. So this is also a time period, if you've got something, say, around 26 degrees of Leo, you may make some destiny decision in your love life at this time. But it can also be a time that someone lucky for you and your destiny may come in at this time, because the north nodes are very much tied in with our destiny path, right? And the sun rules the sign of Leo. So another important date, especially if you've got something around 26 degrees of Leo. Venus in Leo is going to square Jupiter now in Taurus. And that's going to happen around the time period. It's going to happen 3 times between June and mid-September. So this is kind of like throwing the spanner in the works here, where some folks may, with the square, I mean, it's hard to get a bad aspect with Jupiter. That's the positive side of this. But on the negative side, Jupiter in a square can make things grow too quickly, or make us feel too optimistic. And what is it going to be too optimistic about? The love that we think is true love. So this may be a time period, and of course this is the time period that Venus is going to be at least partially going to be retrograde, where we may fall in love or think we're in love, and then as the square happens, question that, right? And as I said, it's 3 times that it actually does this between June and mid-September. So there's going to be some checkpoints during this time period, mostly during the summer of 2023, where it's not going to be all pushing forward with this dramatic, royal, true love, but that we're also going to be doing some checks on things and saying, I got to make sure about this. And I think this type of activity is good at any time when we're falling in love, but it's going to be emphasized for a lot of folks during this time period, mostly during the summer of 2023. All right. On the 4th of September, Venus now, of course, is direct, and it'll be at 12 degrees. So again, go back to your charts, see if you've got anything around the 12-degree mark of Leo. But this is going to now see some optimism with regards to whether or not we want to keep a past love in our life for the present and the future, whether a new relationship that starts is the right one for us, or we may also take this time to decide to change up our appearance. Maybe we took the summer months to experiment with different things or look at different things, but didn't pull the trigger with regards to changing either something to do with our beauty, anything to do with our clothing. It can be tied into that as well. But then we decide at the 4th of September and onwards, I'm going to do some changes here. The 15th September, Mercury going direct will be at 8 degrees of Virgo. So that's also another, even though it's not directly connected in with the Venus retrograde, it's a retrograde that now is going to be going direct. So messages, Mercury does rule the sign of Virgo. So there's going to be probably some messages coming in around the 15th of September that may be important for some folks. And the facts can come up, the real facts that are important. And that might be tied in with something to do with a love in our life, but it could be also our money too, right? Venus can represent money. The 30th of September, we will have Venus now going direct, square Uranus at 15 of Leo, and of course 15 of Taurus. So this could have also like a spanner in the works again, right? Now, the positive side of this is that Venus is going to be direct at this time. And it's halfway through the sign. But squaring Uranus, I would say this could, it could be a couple things. It could be that on the 30th of September, some folks break up. That, it was a great summer of love, but this isn't for me. And there's some big breakup that happens. But I think also Venus will certainly soften the edges of that square. So it could also bring in a sudden relationship of some sort too, even though it's a square. We're still talking about Leo here, right? And Leo wanting to express its authentic self. On the 2nd of October, Venus, obviously direct, will be trining the north nodes. And I think this is also a favorable time too. So this is going to point more to our, if you just couple these energies together, the north nodes is our destiny. Venus can be money. More than likely, it'll be connected with love because we still have it in Leo. So this is Venus being at 24 degrees of Leo and the north nodes being at 24 degrees of Aries. It could also, I was thinking, if we take Venus in the realm of money, this could have a course correction of some sort with regards to our global economy, right? And our global destiny path with regards to our money. There may be a tie-in, though, with regards to creatively working with money and our destiny with our money. We'll just have to see how that plays out. Because, of course, with the north nodes being in Aries, and Aries being the start of the natural zodiac, there's some new initiation here, right? But there's a creative element that's part of that. On the 7th of October, we will have Venus out of shadow at 28 degrees of Leo. So I think that is going to be, if you want to aim for a sure time period when some beauty thing that you might want to do to yourself will go right, you might want to wait till the 7th of October when Venus will be completely out of shadow at that time. And of course, just to go back again to some of the generations that were born with Pluto at 28 degrees of Leo, and those that were born with Uranus at 28 degrees of Leo, you'll have a final activation with Venus going forward. And some of the changes that may, depending where this falls, what house it is in yours, this may also be another time point where transformation for some folks, and maybe some surprises, maybe some enlightenments for other folks too. All right, so next what I'm going to do is look at the ascendants and or the sun signs. All right, so Pisces. Pisces, this is in your 6th house. And the 6th house represents a few things. Typically, we talk about the 6th house being your health, but it's also a house of service. It's also a house of small animals. And it's also your day-to-day job. And for those that don't work, it's the day-to-day things that you do. So those are all areas of your life, Pisces, that could be brought up. All of them can be brought up into view with the Venus being in Leo, or just one or two. So I would say, generally speaking, you could have something like a true love you discover at work. And that could happen for some Pisces here. The other thing that could happen is you decide that you're not being valued in the job that you do, and that you start trying to negotiate either for more money, because that's Venus, or and it may be that you've got to negotiate with a woman, because that's represented by Venus too, or that you decide you're going to leave this job, day-to-day job that you're doing, because it's not valuing you, and it's not giving you the money that you want. And you take the retrograde time period to check out other possibilities, either staying in the same company you're in, but changing your job, or leaving that job and looking at other potentials that could be out there for you. Now, for others, with Venus being in here, there could be some benefit that comes through a female regarding your health. Well, how could that play out? It could play out as a female doctor, for instance. It could play out as a female who specializes in nutrition or exercise programs that really helps change up your life here, where during the Venus retrograde, you work with them to change these things. And then as Venus goes direct, you start seeing the results. So there's going to be some Pisces that fall in that area too, right? And then there's going to still be some Pisces that decide they want to get a small animal, that they've fallen in love with some small animal that then becomes part of their life and gives them lots of fun and lots of fun activities, because Leo is all about having fun too, right? Take care of yourself, Pisces. All right, well, that wraps up my actual Venus in Leo, whether it's retrograde and or direct. But I did want to add in here at the end of the video a notation to folks that, next year in 2024 in December, we're actually going to have a Mars retrograde, and it's going to actually be in Leo. So it's very interesting that it's not going to go over exactly the same degree points, and it will dip into Cancer as well. But I thought that was really interesting. So I think that for some folks, and I'll talk about this Mars retrograde in Leo, much later, but just know that probably in December 2024, as well as January, you may have some some kind of reworking that you might have to do, where you may have to take your energy, that's Mars, and rework some of the areas that you developed while we had Venus in Leo. So for some folks, that's going to be money. Some folks, that's going to be love. Some folks, it's going to be value of yourself, and even possessions as well, right? All right, folks, take care of yourself. As always, I love doing astrology. If you want me to do your chart, all my contact info is below. Please reach out to me. And take care of yourself. I would say have lots of fun this summer. Leo is all about having fun. Live life large and never stop loving. I think the big thing for me is love of yourself, and let that love of yourself radiate out to others, especially over June to October 2023, because you're going to have, for some folks, whatever love you've got radiating out of you, that's going to come back in spades over the summer time period. Take care. Sending you lots of love. Bye for now.